Hey friends, welcome back to the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. I am your host, Jamie Balmain, and welcome to the first of probably several episodes where we're going to be talking about planning for the new year. This is going to be a really fun discussion. I'm hoping to give you a lot of really good ideas to think through for looking back over your year, doing a year-end review. I'm going to make the case for why you need to do this. You absolutely need to do this in order to plan well for the next year. So we're going to jump right in. I only have one little announcement for you. Well, kind of two. Merry Christmas. We are getting close to Christmas. You might be listening to this after Christmas, but if you are listening to it beforehand, then you can listen along today without having to do anything. I'm not going to give you any assignments. I'm not going to tell you to write anything down. It's the perfect time to listen to this week while you're driving around town, while you are wrapping Christmas presents. You got a lot of things going on while you're cooking Christmas dinner. Pop me into your headphones and you can listen along, because what I'm going to ask you today is to just think about what we're discussing today. I want you to think about this topic for the next 2 weeks. You don't have to take any actions. You don't have to do anything. You're just going to think. All right. Announcement number 2 is that we do have a really fun free planning course that's going to be coming up probably the week after Christmas, maybe into the first, sometime around there. I will have lots and lots of information for you guys, hopefully in the next podcast episode, where you can sign up for this free workshop. It's going to be amazing. Like, if you need help, if you need new routines, if you are just feeling like you want to reset in 2024, this free workshop is going to be amazing. I was hoping to have all the details for you today, but I didn't quite get there. It's a busy month, right, guys? So I will have that for you, hopefully next episode. But just if you're thinking, oh, Jamie, everything you're talking about sounds great today, I really want to work on this, we're going to work on it together in a free workshop that's coming soon. So pay attention. All right. So today we're talking about year-end review. Before we can get to setting goals for next year, if you are going to set a word or a theme for next year, really starting to come up with a list that you can take action on for next year. Before we can get to that, we need to evaluate how this year went. And right now, mid-December, counting down to Christmas, I am in planning mode. But I'm not in planning mode of getting a planner out and writing things down just yet. I am in brainstorming mode. The thing is, I can't get anything solid down right now before Christmas. And often what I do, I know myself, I know my brain. Often what I do that I try to do is get all of my planning done very, very early December, because I know we're going to blink. December will be over. It'll be past Christmas. But this year, I did not get to it. And so the thing is, I know that I can't do a bunch of planning this week. There's no way. I've got way too much focus on Christmas of all the fun things. We got lots of hosting opportunities coming up the next 2 weeks, which is all great. So what I'm doing is I am in planning mode in my brain. I'm in thinking and brainstorming mode. And that's what I want to encourage you in today. I haven't put anything down on paper yet, but my brain has been going. It's been thinking. I don't have anything solidified yet. I'm not quite sure what my goals are going to be for next year, but I've got the thought process started. So the thing is, New Year is the perfect time to jump into new habits, to new routines. I'm a huge believer in routines, getting things to where they become second nature in your life. This is not about setting some crazy resolutions that you're never going to think of past January 2nd. We want to set new goals, new rhythms, new routines that are going to be sustainable into next year. Things that you can actually start making some goals that really are life-changing. Goals that are going to stretch you, but goals that are also doable, that you can actually do, that you can actually accomplish, that you can actually work into your schedule, into your routine. And it is the absolute perfect time to do this, not just because it's a new year. So pretty soon, it's going to be January 1st, 2024. We're going to have to remember when we're writing things out to write 24 instead of 23. And so that's great. It's a great time to set new goals. Like, it's a brand new year. But really, for me, the biggest reason why I absolutely love January for this is because November and December for me go by in an absolute blink. Like, they're I feel like one second I am excited for September 1st. I'm like, it's still hot where we live in August. So I'm like ready for sweaters. I'm ready for cool weather. I love fall. I'm ready for everything pumpkin. And I feel like that was me like 10 seconds ago. And now it will be January 1st. Before I just even blink, the next 2 weeks will go by very, very quickly. And so what happens though is, for us anyway, December becomes a different zone of being, right? Like December schedules are unlike any other schedules the rest of the year. We have so many hospitality events, so many great times of getting together with people. We've got all kinds of baking and going to see Christmas lights and lots of Christmas events. Our family devotions look different this month as we're doing an Advent study. There's so many things that December ends up looking so different. Our schedules are different. People are on school break. You just end up hopefully having a good month, although sometimes December can be a really hard month too, but it ends up being a very different month. So for me, I know we hit mid-November. November and December then are just different. And so by the time Christmas is wrapping up, I am ready for good, solid routines again. I am ready for normal life. I'm ready for like more margin in my time, getting back to exercising, eating well, really getting back to like, we're going to get good routines. And so I think that's also why January is such a great time to jump into those things, because it's coming off of November, December, even the fall, you got back to school. It just kind of, the fall just bleeds one thing into another. We get to January, and that's the time when I go, okay, I can take a step back. I can evaluate our routines and schedules and figure out, what does this next season, what does this next year require? And I tend to do this about 3 times a year. January, I'm looking forward to the spring semester, figuring out school routines, health routines. What do we need to change and do? We hit about June 1st, May 1st, maybe, depending on the year. And I'm looking at, okay, what does our next 3 months look like? What does summer look like for us? What are our routines? What are our schedules? And then, of course, again, August, September transition, you do the same thing. So about 3 times a year, I'm really evaluating, what does this look like? And so for me, I love being able to evaluate the whole year at once. What does 2024 have on the docket for us? Now, we don't know everything that's going to be coming up in 2024. Things will change. I'm going to share my year-end review from 2023. And things changed quite a bit in my goals. Some of them I hit beautifully. Others I didn't even touch. So you don't always know what your whole year is going to look like, but at least planning ahead and being intentional with where you want to spend your time is what we want to be looking at right now. And the best way to do that is to look back over the previous year. And I do this pretty in-depthly. A lot of people will say, oh, think back over your year. What did you like? But it can be hard sometimes to actually evaluate your year. It can be hard to think back through. 12 months is actually a long time. It can be hard to think back through all of the things that did work or didn't work. And so I'm going to guide you through some questions today. I have a whole list for you. You can find them at the show notes, findingjoyinyourhome.com. If you are watching this on YouTube, I will put the questions down below as well so that you can look through these questions. Please also comment if you have other questions or things that you like to think through when it comes to like dissecting your last year. Please comment and let me know, because it's always great to hear what you guys have going on. So for us, January has actually historically been a very busy month for us with our business. January is not a low-key month. It's a very different busy than November and December, but January is usually a pretty packed full as well. And so that means I really do need to hit my year well to start. Like I need to start out well, right out the gate. And it can be easy to feel like you're just exhausted, right? Coming off November, December, busyness, parties, all the things. And that's fine. If you have a slower January, that's wonderful. But if you're like me and you're like, I really need to make January count, or we're going to really get behind on stuff, then that's why I particularly like starting to think about this now as well, because the first week in January we'll hit the ground running for us. We're back to school, we're back to work routines, we're back to normal life. And so I want to be able to do that well. And so taking the time to brainstorm and really think about these things makes a really big difference. All right. So today you're going to do my year-end review with me. If you're watching on YouTube, I've got my phone here with all my notes. So if I'm looking down a lot, it's only because I have so many things that I wrote down. So to be honest, I've been thinking about this kind of low key in the back of my brain for a couple of weeks now, but I sat down and actually wrote this all out just now, right before hopping on, because I really did want to feel like you guys were doing the year-end review with me without you having to suffer through the times where I'm just like staring off into blank space, like thinking. So I did just do this. So this can be very simple. This doesn't have to be this hard thing. And in fact, I wouldn't have written this all down, except that I needed to remember it to talk to you guys. So you can write this year-end review down, or just have it be kind of ruminating in the back of your mind in the next few weeks. Just really be kind of thinking about it, thinking back over the year, even go through and be like, what did we have on our schedule last January? What did we do February? What did March look like? Because it's going to remind you of actually how much you did this year. And I think one of the things, we'll talk about this at the very end, but one of the things we tend to do is right now in December, you're thinking through all the things that aren't working well right now. You're thinking through all of the franticness. You're thinking of all the impatience and all the things I need to work on. And that's great. But it's really easy to then not have gratitude and thankfulness to the Lord for what did take place this last year. We had a lot of hard this year, but we also had a lot of blessing. We had a lot of things that God grew us in and that we did make progress on. So what I can do then is tend to just focus on all the things right now in December that aren't working well and that aren't going well and that I need to change for next month, without also the recognizing how far we've come in different areas this year, how much progress has been made. So I really do want to encourage you to really deeply think back through this year. Think through the things that you have made progress on, that you are doing better, the things that have improved, because we don't want this to just be a pity party of all the horrible wrong things and I need to change 50 million things tomorrow. That's also not realistic. We need to set realistic goals. We need to do baby steps. You might have a lot of things you want to change and work on, but we're going to start slow. We're going to start with baby steps. And looking back over your year can make that a lot more possible, a lot more doable. I'm even thinking, like, I looked back at my goals for this last year, and I realized some of the areas were a little overzealous and I didn't accomplish them fully. And that's okay. That's totally fine. But it helps me in setting more accurate goals for next year as well, because I can go, well, yeah, Jamie, I can't do that many things. And I tend to be an overachiever. I'm going to make 55 goals when really I only have time for 10. So that is what I have to combat. I have to make sure that I am being more realistic with the amount of time I actually have, the capacity I have, the energy I have, and not thinking, oh, I'm going to do 100 things next year. That sounds great, but no, I can't actually do it. Other people have the opposite personality where they tend to not shoot high because they're afraid of failure. Or maybe you're more perfectionistic and you're like, well, I don't want to write 5 things because what if I don't accomplish those? I'm only going to write 2. Well, if you write 5 things down, maybe you'll hit 3 or 4. You may still not do all 5, but it might push you to reach a little bit more, to extend yourself a little bit more, to hit some goals you didn't think that you could have. So really be honest with yourself too. Where are you? Do you need to rein yourself in a little bit like Jamie? Or are you the opposite personality where maybe you need to push yourself? You need to step outside your comfort zone a little bit and say, I'm going to do something big this year. Maybe that's where you're at. So really think through that. And as we get to the next step in this, in another couple episodes where we're actually really starting to formulate our goals, a huge step and part of this is bringing the Lord into this. Praying, asking the Lord for direction, for clarity, for you and your husband to be on the same page on these. And there's so much where we want the Lord to lead, but that not in a passive way. Like we're not just sitting back and saying, I'm never going to plan anything because the Lord's just going to make things happen. God is sovereign. God is in control, but we also have a responsibility to plan, to take dominion, to be wise with our time and creating new habits, new routines. It's a great way that we can wisely steward the time that God has given us. So in this process, we want to keep prayer really at the forefront. And especially as we're thinking through what does next year look like, remember to be going to the Lord in prayer. And if you're right now, you're sitting in a puddle and you feel like you have no thoughts, you have no nothing, go to the Lord and say, Lord, give me wisdom, give me clarity. What does this look like for me and for my life? How can I implement these things that we're talking about in a way that makes sense for my life and for my family? All right, so here is my year-end review. Here's what I did. First thing I did was a look back over the goals that I set for last year. So last year, I had set goals in several different areas. Jason and I, and so this is a much bigger topic than we can talk about all today. So I'm going to focus on my household goals. Jason and I set goals in, I guess we had goals in about 4 different areas. So we have our business goals. We run a small business together. It is Jason's full-time income. It's our family's full-time income. This is his job. So that's a really big area. A lot of what we do revolves around those business goals and business timing, all of that. So we had our business goals. Jason and I each had our own personal goals. So we have our own Bible reading goals, our own regular reading goals, things that are just a more personal, like I want to read this many books. And then we had our homeschool goals, which were kind of more just, I don't know if you'd say goals, but like what we wanted, I guess they're goals of like what we want to study this year with the kids and what would we like to figure out incorporating. So one of the things we wanted to do this year was start Shakespeare study. So that was kind of one of our goals, was to incorporate Shakespeare study into our homeschool day, figure out what that looks like. Then my 4th category, this is the one that we have talked about a lot on here, were my household goals. So I did an episode last February that shared my 5 household goals, where I really talked about these in depth of what I was planning, why I wanted to do them, what I was working on. You're going to sense a theme in these 5 goals, which I very much felt like last year, of a very household homemaking focus in these 5. I felt like this was my time to really work on these household goals. I'm going to share with you what they are. And for this last year, it really made a lot of sense. So we spent 2020 to 2022, we spent 2 years traveling around the country in a renovated 32-foot RV. It was our adventure time. It was incredible. But as you can imagine, living and working on the road, homeschooling on the road, we didn't have like normal routines. They changed from day to day. It was flexible. That's what defined our routines, was flexibility. And that's what we needed for those 2 years. We moved into this house in April of 2022. So we are of 2022. Yes, that's correct. So this next April will be 2 years. We've lived in this house now about 1.5 years. So when we moved in, I was already a few months pregnant, 6 months pregnant, something, 5 months. I was pregnant with Ricky. And that whole summer, we just really spent sinking into normal life again, normal routines in a normal house. We had Ricky in August, and then the rest of the year, I had a newborn, and we were going through the holidays, and kind of August through December was on fast forward. And so I felt like 2023 was my year to sink back into what it means to live in a home, normal routines, and not having that adventure piece of our life that took up so much time. What does it mean to get back to things like gardening and food preserving and all these things that I had been put on hold for 2 years for good reasons? I really wanted to dive back into those. And so you can really sense a theme for me through the year of these very practical things within my home. And that was great because that is what I needed. I really wanted to sink into these. And so I can already tell, talking about these goals, my focus is going to be different for next year. And I will share, there is a lot up in the air for us at the moment for 2024. There are some really big changes that are probably coming up for us for next year, but maybe not. Like, we're probably almost definitely moving, but also maybe not. Like, there's a lot. There's some things I can't share yet. There's so many things that could be changing, could not. Our next year's up in the air. There's a lot that we're just not really quite sure how the year is going to go. And so that definitely factors in to our plans. I originally thought there's no way we're going to be in this same house next summer. So I'm definitely not doing a garden. Well, now I'm going, maybe I'm going to do a garden. There's a lot of those types of things. So that is definitely going to be factored into next year. So all of that is going to really factor into the things I did accomplish this year and what will be coming up for next year. There's a lot of things that can change our circumstances and kind of the theme that we're working off of for the year. So here's my 5 goals. I'm not going to go super in depth, but I am going to show you how I look back on these goals and evaluate what I did or didn't do. Now, I will say there's absolutely no guilt here. There's no like, oh, I'm such a terrible person because I didn't do any of my goals. Sometimes it's just because you kind of forgot and you're like, I want to work on that still. Great. Add that to your goal for next year. Sometimes your year turned out very differently than you thought and your goals changed. That's okay too. If you're like, yeah, I set that goal, I really wanted to do it last year, it's not important to me anymore. That's completely fine too. Things can change. So this is not a guilt inducing. This is not like, oh, I'm so terrible, I never did any of these things. No, this is an opportunity to review and to learn and to make plans from there. So number one, I had a big gardening goal. So one of my big goals, one of our family goals is in the next 10 years, we'd like to like drastically uptick the amount of food that we are growing and making ourselves here in our home. And we have big goals of wanting property and all these things. Well, right now, while we're living in the suburbs with a little tiny backyard, there are still so many things that we can be doing. And so I want to learn gardening. I want to learn all of these things. So my goal the last 2 years has been that I'm going to learn one new gardening thing per year. So I want to be a master gardener. I want to do that. I want to just be like green thumb, and I don't have a green thumb at all. I'm learning. I feel like it's like half green this last year. I'm learning. And that's one of my big goals. My 10-year goal is ginormous and ridiculous for somebody who a few years ago didn't know a single thing about gardening and could never get anything to live longer than a month. So because of that, I'm breaking that down into a smaller goal of I want to learn one new gardening thing per year. So in 2022, we moved into this house in April and I started seeds that month because my goal for 2022 was that I want to learn how to grow things from seeds. If I'm going to have this huge, massive garden, I need to know how to not just go buy transplants at Home Depot. I need to know how to do seeds. And I had tried seeds and they didn't work. And so I was going to commit and fully do this. Now, there's still, with gardening, with everything, there's still a million things for me to learn, but I can confidently say now that I know how to start a garden from seeds. I know the process. I know how to keep them warm. We got warming mats and we got lights. I know how to do that process and I have seeds. I know how to read the seed packets. I gained so much knowledge in 2022 from just saying, even if my garden utterly fails in the middle of summer, my goal is that I'm going to figure out how to start seeds. That was my one and only gardening goal. Now, I did a lot more than that. Thank the Lord. The seeds worked great. We had a great harvest over summer. A lot of the end of summer stuff did not get picked because I had a baby August 12th and right in the middle. And that's okay because I learned something. And that's what I wanted to do. So for 2023, my goal was that I wanted to figure out planting onions and potatoes. So those are two very different things. I had to figure out, how do you get seed potatoes? What do you do with them? What do you mean that you have to like make a tower for them? There's all kinds of things involved. And so that's what we did. We did in February and March is we planted onions and we planted potatoes. Our potatoes went over very well and our onions went over like half well. And I think part of it is we just neglected the onions too much. Or, I don't know. That's where I need to like troubleshoot. But we did that. That was fantastic. We figured out how to plant onions and potatoes. So if we do it again this year, we're going to be 10 steps ahead because we can skip all those beginner steps of like Googling, where do you buy seed potatoes and what kind grow in Oklahoma and when do you put them in the ground? Like I can skip all of that and then we can now troubleshoot our onions more. So it's a perfect example, whether you're a gardener or not, it's a perfect example to take a goal that might be a humongous giant goal, break it down into easier steps, and then realize that you can improve upon that. So I accomplished my goal for this year. We planted onions and potatoes. I didn't get as large of a potato harvest as I wanted, and we realized we need to plant way more if we want to like feed our family with potatoes for a year. And we really need to work on our onions, but that's fine because we did that first goal. We figured out how to do all that stuff, and now I can improve upon that. My second gardening goal for the year was to plant. I was determined I'm going to plant a fall and winter garden. I've never done a fall or winter garden. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And our summer, I'm just going to be honest, was wild. We had a very, very, very tough first 6 months of this year. Probably our hardest year we have ever had in business, including our first year full time. It was a really hard year. The economy really finally caught up to us, hit us in some unexpected ways. It is really tough, you guys, to run a small business right now. If you're a small business listening to this, I feel like we are all struggling and trying to figure out, how do we pivot? How do you stay afloat? And praise the Lord, we're doing so much better. I think we're walking into 2024 in a much better place, but this year was rough. And this summer is when it really just kind of caught up with us. And it was, July and August when I should have been planting all my fall stuff. And it just did not take priority. There was too much other stuff going on, a little bit too much survival mode going on. You know what I mean? And so I didn't fully do this. Goal as much as like I had wanted to, but Jason knew how important this goal was to me. And so I was really lamenting, I'm probably, mid-August, that I hadn't started seeds. It was too late for a lot of the things. And he's like, let's just go to Home Depot, or we went to our local nursery first, and they didn't have much. And then we went to Home Depot, and he's like, let's just see what they have, and we'll plant whatever. And he was very sweet and supportive because he knew I really had wanted to try to figure out fall gardening. And so we got broccoli, and we got lettuce, and we got all kinds of stuff, and filled our four boxes. We bought a couple crops that my son really wanted that I knew were probably a little too late, but I'm like, they're here, let's try it. Yeah, they completely died. And it was wonderful. That's the learning that you need. You go, oh yeah, it was definitely too late to plant those. That was not a failure. That was a learning process. That's what I wanted out of planting a fall garden. And so we did that about halfway. And now here we're sitting in December, and I don't have a winter garden. I don't have cold boxes that we were going to build. That's just not, it didn't end up taking priority. It wasn't important enough to make happen, but it is something that now I can have for next year. Probably also won't be the case. But maybe it could be. I could kind of have it as an alternate goal, like depending on if we're in this house. I mean, there's next year is up in the air. But it's really, really neat to see, because if you had just asked me an hour ago before I'd done this review, I would have been like, oh, gardening goals. My garden was terrible this year. Nothing happened. But I look back over this and I go, things did happen. I smashed one of those goals, completely smashed, halfway did another goal, and we still had a modest summer garden this year. I didn't do the full big shebang like I was going to, but I did do stuff. I made progress on these goals. And guess what? The more important thing is I made progress in my ultimate big, giant, huge goal of wanting to grow 95% of our produce. I made progress in that. And if you look at year 1, figuring out how to start seeds, year 2, planting onions, potatoes, and figuring out a fall garden, that is all knowledge that I am taking with me into next year. That is all baby steps building upon for this ultimate, huge, big goal. So if you're like, I want to write a book, that's my huge, big, crazy dream. Maybe that will happen in 2024, but maybe some of your baby steps first need to be take a course on writing a book, figure out how to upload your illustrated designs to a digital platform for your book, or there's a trillion little baby steps that you could take beforehand that maybe aren't even necessarily write that book, but they're getting you closer to that goal. It's skills, it's knowledge, it's discipline, it's all of these things that are coalescing into being ready to do that big goal, of figuring out what that big goal is. And so I really want to encourage you that it is very helpful. Let's look back over the year and look for places that you did even make some baby steps. I bought a book on writing. Great. Your next step is to read that book and then put it into practice. There are so many different ways that we can take this and that we can apply it. All right, so that was goal number 1. Goal number 2 is preserving more food this year. So along with the gardening goals, one of my goals has been to really source out. I had really wanted to find somewhere that I could buy 40-pound boxes of apples. I had huge apple goals for this year. That's one thing I didn't do last year because I had a newborn. And so I wanted to do huge things of apples. And I had all these goals. And I didn't can a single thing. I don't think I did. I preserved a bunch of peppers. I dehydrated a bunch of peppers because my friend gave me a whole box of peppers. And I think that was literally for the whole year, that was it. And it was one of my big goals, was to do more preserving. I had a whole list of the things we were going to do. A bunch of hot sauces from our peppers. We wanted to do even more tomatoes this year to preserve tomatoes. 2022, I did a bunch of preserving. Still, it wasn't as much as I had wanted, but I made baby steps. And this is one of those that this early spring and summer was really, really, really hard for us. And my focus was in different places. My focus needed to be in different places for our family. And so that is one of those that goal, it did not happen. And that is absolutely okay. It is something that I can take a look at for looking, if we just knew that this next year was going to be same old, that would absolutely be a goal that I would transfer for next year. But I think I have a feeling 2024 is going to look a lot different for us. So we shall see on that one. But it's a good reminder. You can set goals and they don't always end up actually being a priority in your year. All right. Goal number 3. I'm going to give myself an 80% on this one. Make more homemade household use items. So things like laundry detergent, dishwasher detergent. I did pretty well. There was a few more things that I wanted to like really start to figure out and like nail what my recipes are and get like a recipe book of my own recipes going of like, these are my favorite. Because with household items, when you make your own laundry detergent, everybody has different washing machines, different dirtiness requirements, different water pressure. You know, if you have hard water or soft water, not pressure, but whatever, hardness, softness. There's a word that I'm trying to think of. Everybody has different requirements. So you may need to try 3 or 4 different laundry detergent recipes to really figure out the one that works well for you. And this was a goal that I would say, like I said, I think I did about 80%. Now, I wasn't super specific with this goal either. This was more of a vague, like, I want to do more of those. Whereas if I was going to be really specific with my goal, I should have said, I want to learn to make these 12 things. I'm going to make 1 thing per month. That totally would have been doable. And yet I was more kind of a vague, I want to make more of them. So I would say I did this about 80% of the way. And what I ended up focusing a lot more on this fall was I taught a course for you guys on building a natural medicine cabinet. So I really did a pivot kind of in the middle of the year. We had a lot of sickness this year. So I did kind of a pivot away from like household cleaning items to making a lot more salves and tinctures and herbal remedies for sickness. So I still I would say I'd give myself like 100% on this because my whole goal was wanting to be more intentional with the things that I was making at home to make really good quality and to also make them a lot more inexpensively. So that goal just kind of pivoted and shifted into, as we needed in the middle of the year, shifted into those natural medicine cabinet items. So while I 100% didn't convert everything to all homemade products, I also did a lot more in the natural medicine cabinet. And so I'm going to change it. I'm going to give myself 100 on that because really my point with that goal was being intentional with those things. So you might call it cheating. I'm going to call it 100%. All right. Number 4. Okay. Getting household routines more smooth. So things like cleaning routines, better chores routines for kids, smoother routines overall. This is a really interesting goal of mine when I'm thinking back over the year. Like I said, so January through June was about the hardest part of our year. Was maybe February, March to June was really, really tough. And we got into like July and I was like, we need to figure out how to change things. Like this has been a really tough year. And we just were kind of in survival mode month after month. And when that happens too long, you just start running on fumes. You start realizing that things are falling apart. You can do survival mode for a little while. Normal things go on hold and we're in crisis mode. We got to do this one thing. We got to figure this out. That happens too long though. And your life starts falling apart. And so I had set these goals in February. I was super late on goals apparently this year, or maybe the household ones. Maybe I had them done earlier, but I hadn't done the episode yet. I think I did these in January, but I recorded this in February and I was in the midst of starting to feel like we need some better routines. Well, little did I know how hard the next few months would be. And hitting about July, Jason and I were really in survival mode in July. Like we got to put one foot in front of the other, get the things done that we can get done. And we need to get some things changed for August. We really have nothing that we can do this month because we just got to hold on for dear life and be thankful to the Lord for that. Like there was circumstances that we couldn't change that we had to rely on the Lord and get through. And we said August, we really need to work on some things. And I feel like in certain ways, God kind of brought us to this low point so that we could see the beauty and the gift in these routines and see how much we really needed to fight for them. And so while this was a goal that I set in January, it really didn't come to fruition until August. And there are goals and things that we're going to set that take a really long time. You might set a big goal for next year and you may not see it come to fruition until November or December, or you may not see even the baby steps of that start until then. So give yourself time. A year is a very long time to plan for and to make plans and goals and things. But now when I look, it feels like to me it's been all year that we've had better routines. So it's really crazy to me when I look and say, no, about mid-August is when we just really got serious. We just smashed it. We were like, this has to change. We're going to be fierce. It took Jason and I both being fierce together to say, we're changing these routines. We're making things better. We have to get more stability after this crazy year. And we just kind of need to force it before it feels good. Like we had to make it happen, and it was painful at first. And now I look at that fruition. I look at the fruit of these it's only been a few months, and our life feels entirely different. The second half of the year has been an entirely different year than the first half. And a huge part of that, I have to just praise the Lord. I have to thank him for his goodness, his faithfulness, his leading to, and kind of making it clear where Jason and I needed to work on some things, because you can't be intentional about every single thing at every moment of every day. People will often say you have to give 100% of you in everything that you do. And that's not true. Like, it's not true. We need to be doing our best for the glory of God. But there's lots of things that if I'm going to host for a big group, I don't have to go 120% beyond and make 5 different types of pie and I don't have to do all these crazy things. I shouldn't just do the bare minimum and be like, here's some slop for you, but I can do a simple meal that's still going to be really great for everybody, right? I don't have to, saying that you're going to give 100% in every single area means you're going to go hardcore. You're going to be like on it. And you cannot do that in very many areas. You need to focus on a few different areas. Like this one area I'm going all out on right now. I am, come what may, I'm getting up at 6 a.m. every morning, and I'm going to figure out how to orient other things to make that happen. Well, once that becomes a habit, once you're good at that, once it's second nature, yeah, you add the next thing in, right? You can be building on things. But often, and maybe it's my personality, so maybe you're like me or maybe you're not, I will be like, oh my gosh, routines need to change. I'm going to do 20 new things starting tomorrow. And I try to jump in 100% and change all these different things. And it's too much. It's too fast. It's too many things. You do it for a day and then you die. So it's like, if you're going to start a new exercise program and you're like, I'm finally getting fit, and you start too hard of an exercise program and you go too hard, too all in doing that exercise, and then you can't work out for a week because you've destroyed your body and you're way too sore, then you don't ever go back to it. You don't pick it up again. What you need to do is start a moderate exercise program, maybe even something that's a tiny bit easy, because right now you're just trying to establish your routine of exercise, right? So you're going to jump in and do kind of a moderate, and you're going to make yourself a little sore, but not so sore that tomorrow you can't do day number 2. And you need to start easy, and you need to ease your way in, and you need to say, this is my focus right now. I'm not trying to do 100 different goals. I am trying to work on my fitness. The next 2 weeks, that's going to be kind of my new focus. You're still holding everything else together in your life. There's still so many things to focus on, but I'm going to do kind of one new thing at a time. And so that's what we want to be looking at. And so for me, back to the point, for me, that's really been the change, as I feel like the first half of this year was an entirely different life. And the second half of this year has been very, very different. By God's grace, I'm very thankful for that. And so when I look at this, getting household routines more smooth, I am so proud of the work that we've put in this year, the things that we've changed, and just really have gotten a lot more on the ball with certain things, a lot more scheduled. And I mean, a huge priority of that is Jason and I taking priority for our own health and exercise, which has really just kind of made other things fall in line. It's really amazing how even just changing one thing can kind of make some other things fall in line as well. All right. And then number 5, I'm going to give myself a 30% on this one, is to conquer whole grain sourdough. So this was my year that I was going to really, really jump in. I've done regular sourdough. I've done all those things, but I really wanted to do a whole grain sourdough from freshly milled grain. It's not impossible, but it's much, much harder. And yet Also, my goal in this was partly business oriented. I really wanted to jump in and start experimenting with a lot of different types of grains so that I could give recommendations when someone's like, hey, I'm trying to make mine with einkorn, but it keeps doing this. What can I do? I wanted to put so much time and practice into it that I could help and say, I know exactly why it's coming out too wet. Here's what you need to change. And so it's a lot more for me than it's a much bigger project for me than just being like, I'm going to start a whole grain sourdough starter. There was a lot more to it. So I definitely put work in this year, but I didn't quite conquer it the way that I wanted. This is definitely one that January and February, I will have a huge focus on. Again, not only personally, not only because my family is begging for it and everybody wants it, but also because this will be some important teaching that I'm hoping to have out this next year. So I really need to I've got to have videos done for it. There's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be jumping in. So this one is a household goal that bleeds into a business goal. And it's one that just really didn't end up taking priority this year with all the other stuff going on. So this is one that will be moving into next year. I already know that one for sure. I'm actually already have been working on it a tiny bit this month. And after Christmas, this will be like, I'm jumping in big time. So look forward to that if you're excited about sourdough. All right. So now let's talk about, after you kind of do your goal review from last year, I want you to walk through a few different questions. So I have probably 10 or 15 questions here. Yeah, maybe 12. I'm only going to walk through a couple of these with you guys, and then I'm going to give you the questions on your own to think through. But I want to give you an example of what this can look like. So first question is, what went well this year? Really think through what went well in 2023. You might be sitting here going, this was the best year of my life. And you're going to think of all kinds of great things. You might also be sitting here going, 2023 was tremendously hard and it was hard. And in that case, though, you do want to look back. What were the blessings that the Lord had for you this year? There are blessings. Even in the hardest year, there are times and moments where you can say, we had a really great birthday, or, there can be those sweet spots, those sweet moments. And so we want to really look back over. I think we do tend to focus on the negative things more. It's easier for our brains to go, oh, all these things that aren't working. But back up, slow down, take a look at what went well this year. So one of the things for us, for Jason and I both, is I think we have grown tremendously this year in trusting the Lord. Running a small business is always an act of trust and faith in the Lord. And God just brought us to several points this year where it was like, truly, every single sale that comes in is of the Lord, every single one. And we're going to just trust him that those sales are going to come in so that we can pay our bills. And we're going to trust him in that. And this year largely didn't shape up the way that we kind of thought it was going to go. And yet God is so good. And I feel like my trust, both of our trust in him this year has just deepened tenfold throughout this year. And I can see, while this was not a super fun year to walk through, there were some really hard things. We have a couple of family members walking through also some really personal hard things that we don't share here on, in the ministry. And so there's some hard things going on. And yet we see that we can trust the Lord through that. And so that has been a huge thing for this year. And I can see why God has brought us through what he has brought us through this year, because I'm a different person coming out the other end. And that is called sanctification, my friends. And I can be thankful for that. Even though I'm not thankful for the circumstances that happened, I can be thankful for how the Lord brought us through. All right. So the next thing is our health. This is one that the rubber really met the road. Throughout this summer, I think with all of our stress and not handling the stress well at the beginning of the year, and kind of we had a few moments that were like, wait a minute, what just happened? What are we going to do? We've had a few stressful things like that. And my health was just declining this year. I had several months again of not sleeping, of my cortisol being terrible, my heart rate just through the roof, which just when your cortisol is messed up, it's so much more anxiety of just being stressed all the time and being like, I don't even necessarily know why, but I'm so on edge. And just feeling gross. We've had a lot of sickness this year and just really feeling run down. And so this is one of the things in August that Jason and I were like, we've got to change this. We've got to get back onto taking care of our bodies, nourishing them well. And I felt like I kept kind of trying to do that this year and I'd fall off. So finally in August, we're like, nope, we are making this happen for real. Jason and I are smashing it. And we have so much more room to grow in this, so much more room to grow. But I want to be really, really thankful for the baby steps. And one of the things I really realized was my body, after having 7 babies, my body has become weak. And I walk a lot. I'm very active. I'm not feeling like, I got to get off the couch more. No, I'm so active. I'm running around all the time. Not literally. I hate running. But we walk a lot. I walk fast. I'm always working on projects. I'm up and I'm active. But I realized my muscles were weak. My back was weak. My pelvic floor has just been entirely shot from 7 babies. And when your pelvic floor is shot, it leads to a lot of other issues. And so I just was like, I felt weak. I felt weak and I felt messy. And I definitely have like baby weight that I'd like to lose from having Ricky. There's clothes I'd like to fit into again. But that's not been my primary focus. My focus has been, I just want to feel strong. I want to feel strong and I want to feel healthy and I want to have that vitality. And so I am on month 2 of like a pretty, well, for me, it's a very rigorous workout program. It's like a beginner workout program. And I'm on month 2 of like the solid program, but it has been several months of this year of actually getting several weeks in. So in, I think March, I started a workout program and I hurt my back then. I had these like muscle spasms. I've heard people talk about muscle spasms. I'm like, it's not, what is that? Is it that big a deal? I had back muscle spasms. I will tell you what, I had called my father-in-law who has dealt with us a lot. And I was like, I'm at the point that if I just go to the ER, will they give me things? Like, I can't do this. And so he gave me some great suggestions and he's like, honestly, yeah, if it's this bad. And I'm like, I'm going to try these few more things. And if I can get through to tomorrow, but like, otherwise I need to go in. And it was a lot. And so anyway, that threw me off my workout routine. So that took several weeks then of recovery, and praise the Lord, I didn't have to end up going in. But it was horrific pain. I was like, I will have babies again over this. It was so bad. Anyway, so then I got a couple weeks in again in like June. And I pulled a muscle in my leg. See, I've been having just weakness issues, right? Lots of things to work through, lots of minerals, lots of all these things. So there's been kind of like several rounds this year of where I kind of just kept getting frustrated because I was making progress and then I got knocked down and then making progress and stuff that was out of my control, that I couldn't just do my exercise tomorrow or like I would legitimately hurt myself. And so finally in August, I kind of restarted. I think 3 weeks in again, we got strep throat so bad. And at that point, it just feels comical. Like I'm not meant to do this. My body's just going to rot. I can't. So finally, we were like, nope, we're going to have a good attitude about this. Like, hopefully everything I've done this year has contributed. And when I really started back over, I'm like, I'm starting to day 1. I'm going to do the full 4 weeks. I did the full 4 weeks and I was stronger. Even that first week, I was doing exercises that the first couple of rounds I couldn't do. And so God was using all those points, all those times where it felt like I wasn't actually making any progress. I did the full 4 weeks and now I'm on ow. Smacking things. Now I'm on round 2 and I feel so much stronger. I still have so much work to go, but just even the daily exercise that I've been making a priority has contributed to so much. And so I'm nowhere near where I want my body to be. I'm nowhere near that final goal. I've not arrived. And there's so much that I want to focus on for next year, but I can also be really, really thankful for these baby steps that God has brought me. So like, I feel immensely proud of where I'm at in my health journey because I've made baby steps and I'm working on it. I have not arrived, but I'm working on it. So that's what I want to encourage you is when you're looking back, look through this year, what have you been doing that has actually worked? What is, or worked partway? Like, I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. So what are some areas you can make progress? And those 3 different times, those failed times where I started this exercise, postpartum pelvic floor workout thing, those 3 times set me up for more success this fall. I needed to go through those 3 failures because they were building. They were giving muscle. They were getting me back into it without realizing it. And so now I'm at a place where I'm seeing that come to fruition. You know, they do say it takes a good 4 to 6 weeks to see progress in pelvic floor issues. And I had to put that time. I didn't see any progress for the first several weeks or the first several rounds and then the first several weeks. It's been a whole year of going, I need to make this a priority. I'm trying to make this a priority. I'm falling down. I'm getting back up and I'm finally seeing progress. But you guys, this has been on my goal list all year. 12 months is a very long time when you're working on something like this. So I'm just going to encourage you in that. And then, like I said, our school routines since August have been the very best routines we've ever had. So I feel like this fall has just been such a huge blessing. There's still been a lot of stress. There's still been a lot of work. There's still been a lot of things, but I feel like God has brought us to the point where we're trusting him a whole lot more. All right. So what you want to then also talk about is what didn't go well this year. So I've already shared our life, our household, our work, our school routines. They were really, really difficult the first half of this year. Part of that was me trying to find my rhythm again after having a baby. Ricky was only, 5 months old? January 12th. So like at a 5-month-old, I had a baby, and the first year for me is always different. It really takes me a good year to really kind of find that rhythm again. Now he's, how old is he? 16 months old. Yes. And almost a year and a half. And I mean, it's awesome. He's a big kid now. It feels like, it's entirely different than where I was last year with a 4-month-old. Guess what? A year makes a big difference with a baby. So part of that was that. Part of it was just kind of living through survival mode at the beginning of this year. And part of it was we just weren't necessarily giving priority to the things we should have been giving priority towards. We weren't really building in better routines, I think, because we kept just waiting for that kind of survival modeness, that crisis that we were feeling to wear off. But it just kept bleeding from one month to another. And it took us, but it's all part of the learning process. I don't regret the first half of this year because it brought us to the learning and the space that we are at now. And I can see the way that God was building on that. All right, 2 more I'm going to go through with you. What did I do well in serving and loving my people this year? I really like this question. This is not just about me. This is not just about how I feel and what I want and what I'm doing. I have a household to run. I have people to love. I have people to look after, to care, to serve. And I need to look at, what did I do well this year? What can I say? I loved my people and I served them well. The first thing that came to mind to me is that despite this very busy year with a lot of kind of things going on, we had a lot of good, like food-centered gatherings. We had a lot of good get-togethers. And I did well for the most part, not perfect at all, but I did well in making those things happen, even when time kind of felt short, like making special moments, making sure birthdays were still special, having, doing fun things, getting in the kitchen and cooking with the kids, teaching them recipes. I didn't do as much as I wanted this year, but I still did it. So I'm going to say that is one thing that I did well. What can I improve on in serving and loving my people this year? So now the flip side is what this last year, could I improve upon when it comes to serving and loving these people? Not only the people in your family, but the people in your community. But for my family especially, I need to continue working on my patience. That's definitely something that I have seen a lot of growth on in the last few years, of having patience, speaking kindly, even when I don't feel kind on the inside. It's something I think our whole family kind of needs to work on, because it's got to start with Jason and I making that, setting the precedent in that. But when 1,000 balls are in the air, I need to continue choosing patience, kindness, love, even when I'm, tired, I'm stressed after having a hard day. It's always hard for me after having a baby, like when you're nursing and you're constantly in pain and you're always sore. Those are the times that I can be less patient. I can be like, what do you need? And I want to have loving and kind responses. It's patience. It's really just realizing that I don't have to be snippy in that moment, that I can respond with love and kindness. And I do think I have grown in that in the last few years. It's something I've been trying to work on, but it's also something that I want to make sure is at the forefront of my attention, because it's really easy to just get stressed and tired and, whatever, and not realize how grumpy we are talking, or how we're not responding in kindness, or not having patience for the child who wants to come tell me, a very long story about something that happened in their video game, and I need to have patience and look them in the eye and, make sure that they feel important. And I have a lot to juggle. I'm sure you feel the same way. There's a lot to juggle every single day, but I need to choose patience, love, kindness when it comes to my family. So that's definitely something that I can continue keeping at the forefront of my mind, of my attention as we head into the next year. All right, here are some other questions. I'm not going to go through all of these with you. These are things that I just personally need to think through, and you guys don't need to know every detail of what's going on in my life, right? But you should think through these, okay? If these apply to you. So other questions to ask. I have these written for you in the show notes or in the show notes for YouTube. Other questions to ask. What changes did you navigate well this year? All right, well, we could answer that one for sure. What limitations or circumstances did you have to work through? What is an aha moment that you had this year? I love that. What new skills or knowledge did you acquire this year? Did you work on something new? I learned how to quilt this year. That was not something that was on my goal list. I will definitely have some quilting goals for 2024, which is fun for me. That's a fun hobby. Goals don't need to be this like serious, like driven thing. It can be a fun goal of like, I want to learn these things. So I have several quilts that I have on my goal docket for next year. And I also want to learn how to punch needle embroidery to make rugs. Okay, that sounds so weird if you have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's very cool. And I want to learn how to do that next year. All right. What were 3 highlights from this year? I like thinking through that. What did you accomplish this year that you're most proud of? And what and or who are you most thankful for this year? So kind of running through these different questions can be a really, really great exercise. So what I want to do as we're wrapping up, I know this has been a long episode. Yes, we are almost at the hour mark. Yep. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. I encourage you we're probably over now with sponsors. I encourage you to think over these things the next 2 weeks. So you don't need to get anything down. If you're listening to this before Christmas, especially, don't feel stressed. I can listen to, especially business stuff. I will listen to business stuff for like some great encouragement and ideas. And then I start to get like stressed because I feel like I need to get this written down and I need to work on things. And what am I doing? I don't want you to feel like that with today's episode. I want you to view this as a very good exercise of starting to think through what your plans and goals are going to be for next year. So when you're wrapping presents, when you're stuck in traffic, think through these questions. Just really let your mind wander through it. Let your mind ruminate over them. You don't need to have all the full answers yet. I didn't even go there with most of my stuff today of going, well, so what does that mean for next year? Don't go there yet. Just really be thinking through this year, process this out. And then the next step is going to be, and what does that mean for next year? So if you start thinking these through, you're going to start to form ideas. There's going to be things bouncing around in the back of your brain so that when you do sit down to say, what does this mean for next year? What are my goals? What do I need to work on? You're going to be ready to go, because it can be very hard sometimes when you're like, okay, go. What are your goals for next year? Someone like you're at a party and someone catches you off guard and is like, what are you going to work on for next year? It can be very hard. It can be very difficult to know what your things are going to be. But if you spend the next 2 weeks really thinking this through, you're going to be in a much better position. So I think this is an important step because 12 months is a very long time. There's things that we forgot. There's things that we accomplished that we're not thinking of so many months later. So do this review, really look back over your year. It is, like we talked about earlier, it is very easy to focus on your present hardships that need to change, the things that I need to change right now that I need to work on. And then we can forget all of the growth that we did this year. I have so many things I want to work on and change, so many ideas just kind of bouncing around there. But I've also come so far since January 1st of this year. And I want to celebrate that. I want to thank the Lord for that. I want to be in Thanksgiving. And so that is what that's what I'm working on. This is exactly the step that I am at right now in my goal planning. And in future episodes, we will start to work on breaking that down a little bit more. So thank you guys so much for tuning in with me. Don't forget, we are going to have a free workshop coming up. Stay tuned, hopefully next week, for the announcements. You can also check out our sponsor for today's episode, the Homemaker's Friend Daily Planner. This is the edition for 2024. Head over to homemakersfriend.com. Use my coupon code PLANNER, all capital planner, to get $3 off this already very affordable planner. It has got everything you need to just get this year planned, good rhythms, good routines. It is a planner designed for homemakers by a homemaker. So she definitely knows the things that we need to plan for. Go check it out at homemakersfriend.com. A huge thank you to Sue Holy and Homemakers Friend for sponsoring this episode. All right, ladies, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys back here next week for the next episode.